News Radio 700 WLW.
If you rent, if you are someone who lives in an apartment, you know what I'm about to tell you is true. Rent rates are up nearly 25% since before the pandemic, with an increase of 15% in just the past year. And according to the Census Bureau, almost 4 million people who rent will likely be evicted in the next 2 months. In the next 2 months. Eviction rates were 52% above average in Tampa, 90% above average in Houston, and 94% above average in Minneapolis, St. Paul, all in the last few months. What's going on here? Because it seems like not only is it difficult to find good quality rental property, once you get there, the people that control the rates don't seem to really care how much of a burden it is on you to rent. They just want money, money, money. Standing by is the CEO and founder of Protect Building Services. We've had David Rauch on the show before. He's been in business almost going on 30 years now, and his company has worked to improve the quality of life for communities from coast to coast. David, it's great to have you back. How are you on this glorious Saturday?
Thanks for having me back, Ken.
This is astounding. If this number is true, almost 4 million people who rent will likely be evicted in the next 2 months. This is according to the Census Bureau. Is that an overstatement on their part, or do you think that number is correct?
Well, actually, I do think it's somewhat of an overstatement. Consider between 2000 and 2018, there were 3.7 million evictions a year, 70 million in total. So our run rate is more like 3.7 evictions a year. They're saying we're going to get 3.8 million evictions in the next 2 months. I think it's a little high, but it's still a tremendous number of evictions.
Yeah, and then I rattled off the eviction rates. This was according to an eviction laboratory at Princeton University. Didn't know they had one of those there, but fact of the matter is rent rates are going up. People are not, once you factor in inflation, the cost of living is not keeping up with inflation. I just heard a statistic today that 53% of the people in this country are having trouble meeting finances. That would be not just what you pay in rent or a mortgage, but what you do for your health care, what you do for your food, what you do for your transportation. 53% of people in this country can't pay their bills. So it would stand to reason that if all of those factors are in play, that this number, while it sounds outrageous, let's say it's just 3 million a year. It's outrageous, is it not?
Well, yeah, obviously they put in place the 2 years of moratoriums during the pandemic, which told or stopped all the evictions going on across the country. So you've got 2 years of pent-up eviction demand. So let's just say the run rate is 3.7. So you've got, almost 7-8 million evictions that should have or would have happened that didn't happen. So now last year when those moratoriums were lifted, there's a lot of demand for evictions by the landlords. Mm-hmm. And it's even 10 evictions are horrible, let alone millions of evictions. It's a very sad situation caused by a very bad macroeconomic situation.
I'm reading again these statistics. This is according to Pew, the Pew Research Center. This is adversely affecting minorities. Black households headed by black adults, 58% are renters. 52% of those headed by Latino adults are renters. So this is adversely affecting people of color and people who are of Latin descent, which again I think only exacerbates the problem. I totally get it from the renter's point of view. You're right, that moratorium was in place. A lot of those people have bills to pay as well. But it seems like they're trying to make up for lost time, and it seems like they're trying to make up for lost time at the expense of people of color and people that are of Latin descent.
And that's the terrible irony of this, is that those folks typically vote straight on Democratic, and yet it's this Democratic administration that brought us what I call the triple crown of self-inflicted wounds. You know, number one, you had them shut down the economy. Well, actually, number one was the energy crisis. Not necessary. We were doing great. Number two was the job crisis caused by shutting down the economy. And number three was the rental moratorium. So that's the first thing. The second thing that the feds did is they pumped $5 trillion plus trillion with a T dollars into the economy, causing this inflation, which is now causing interest rates to go up to fight the inflation. And then the third thing, the triple crown, the third crown, is letting 2 to 4 million people into our country that they have to sleep somewhere. They're not staying at the Hyatt or the Holiday Inn. Those folks are sleeping somewhere, and that's causing rents to skyrocket.
Well, it's obviously an ideological and philosophical problem that this country has with this administration. You know, you mentioned all the money that was dumped into the economy, $5 trillion. It's almost like, well, it's just, you know, nobody will have to pay for that. Well, yes, they will, and we're beginning to see the ramifications of that. I found an interesting thing online this week, and forgive me, I can't remember specifically the poll, but it said that 68% of this country think that this country is on the wrong track, yet 40, I believe it was a Marist NBC poll, just in the generic, which party do you favor now? It was Democrats by 1 over Republicans. And I'm thinking to myself, who would, you know, if you know the real facts, who would pull that Democrat lever at this point?
Exactly. Who thinks we're on the right track? Who thinks higher inflation is good? Who thinks spending money that our children and grandchildren are going to have to repay is good? Who thinks that?
Yeah. Well, I think
2
it's
to 4 million people in the country.
Yeah, I think it's a false narrative that is being promulgated by big media. I don't think there's any question about that.
Right.
We'll find out quickly. We're just over 2 months away from a midterm election. I'd be shocked if that poll by NBC Marist was true. But you know, the beauty of all of this is we'll find out in 2 months. What's the answer here? I mean, really, I mean, David, you're a guy who has searched for answers on these kinds of things, as I said, for almost 30 years. What's the answer here? I mean, does government get involved with people who have rental properties? There used to be a thing in New York City called rent control. I'm not sure how well that worked out. But, I mean, where's the answer here? Because the people, I mean, these are real families, real people that are getting squeezed.
Ken, the only answer is to build more rental units and build more condominiums. But, the situation is somewhat complex. But let me explain. Look at California as the petri dish, if you will, of what not to do. California is the most highly regulated housing industry in the country, and the result is almost 1 million people living in tents on the streets. Okay, the result is that if you go to buy a house in California, it's going to cost you close to $1 million. And if you go to rent a house in Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Jose, San Diego, it's going to cost you $3,000 to $5,000 a month. So the answer is building more, not over-regulating like they've done in California and New Jersey and New York. And obviously, they've not only overregulated the housing markets, they've overregulated everything such that people have moved out of California. There was a mass migration out of California, net out migration last year. And unfortunately, those Californians take that equity that they build up in their homes to other states like, Florida and Texas and Oklahoma and Arizona. Therefore, and those, they drive up the markets, the housing and the rental markets in those states. So it's really a tough situation. But the canary in the coal mine, the red flag that I'm throwing up is look at those highly regulated states and don't let that come into your state.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a sign as you cross the Georgia-Florida border, and it says, "Welcome to Florida. Leave your politics leave your politics behind." But the other thing, by the way, we're chatting with David Rauch, housing expert. He's with ProTech Building Services. The other problem, I think you alluded it to, this mass migration from California. There's a migration going on from New York as well, New York State as well. That not only extracts people that were paying state taxes for goods, services, and other things, it also creates a void where the people that are remaining behind are going to pay exorbitant taxes. Their bills aren't going up because once you have all of these things that the governments have given away in places like California and New York, they're not going away. There's not a politician that's going to get elected by saying, yeah, we're going to take this away, that away, this away. So those that are left behind are just going to have to pay more. Am I right?
Absolutely. And you know what a great example of this is? Look at Detroit. Look what happened to Detroit when the politicians came in and thought they'd make everybody's lives better by over-regulating that city. It destroyed it. And that's exactly what's happening right now to California, and New York, and New Jersey, and these other over-regulated states. They're being destroyed. It's scorched earth. People are leaving. Businesses are leaving. Look at all the big businesses that have left California for Arizona and Texas, taking all those jobs with them. And the real sad thing is, as you pointed out, Ken, it's really the poor folks that really suffer the brunt of this. It's their rents that go up. It's inflation that they can least afford to deal with. Unfortunately, it's those folks that suffer the most.
Yeah. David Rauch, you can find him at protect.com, protect.com. Thanks for your thoughts on this, David. We'll catch up down the road. We always do because you've got tremendous insight. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken. Have a good weekend.